one person who has certainly dealt with a lot of pressure, and I'm sure at times some stress, is Sir Graham Henry. Thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me, Graham. So how has your lockdown been so far?
Oh, it's a pleasure to talk, Matt, if it's going to be helpful. We're very privileged, really. And so we've got opportunities to do things. We're on Waiheke. We've got a property there, which is really our holiday place. But we've got a couple of acres here, and there's plenty of projects we can do to keep us busy. And we exercise a lot. We exercise every day, and with the projects and a few new cooking challenges, which is good.
Yeah.
I find if I'm occupied and I'm physically active, I'm much better mentally. So I think there's a huge correlation between the physical and the mental. It is for me anyway. And I found that out when I was coaching. The more I exercised, the better I connected with the people and better I coached. So it's become a bit of a ritual, really.
Yeah. You talked a bit about exercise and what helps to keeping yourself busy. Is there anything specific that you do in your routine that enables you to be a high achiever? Or is there someone you've coached or worked with that has a routine that's aided in their success?
Oh, I think, basically if you've got a passion for something, and I had a passion for rugby coaching, believe it or not. So my wife called me obsessed with it. And I probably was obsessed, but I think obsession is not a bad thing. I think obsession, if you're passionate about something and you give your all to it, it rides over a lot of humps on the way. So I think passion is very important, very, very passionate about doing things, doing them well. But I found as I grew older, and it took me a while to learn, to be frank, that I got into a routine. I was an early riser. So I was up at 5 o'clock, that sort of time, and I'd go to the gym. And if I was with the All Blacks at the time, or we're touring with a rugby team, might have been the Blues or Wales or whatever, I used to go and exercise every morning. Usually went to the gym, often with some other guys, and spend an hour and a half, a lot of cardio, a few light weights. And that set you up for the day. And the more as I said before, the more I exercised, the better I felt mentally. It put me on my toes, made me feel good, enabled me to connect better with the people that I was working with, and I was much more productive. As I said, I think there's a huge correlation between the mental and the physical. And the more active I am, the better I am mentally.
Yeah, I completely agree. Now, you're obviously an incredibly successful rugby coach, and one of the most successful coaches in any sport. But it hasn't all been success, and you've obviously had some challenging times along the way as well. Do you have a favourite failure? And how has that failure set you up for later success?
I don't have a favourite failure, but I think you'll learn a lot more from failure than you do from success. And this may be an example, this virus that we're going through and changes people's lives and makes them think about how they can come out of this better, maybe better as a person, better, more productive, better in their career and their work life and so on. My two biggest experiences when I coached the British and Irish Lions to Australia in 2001, we didn't win the series, and I thought we were good enough to do so. And I gave that a lot of thought. I was very disappointed about that. And this is a long story, Matt, but I went back to Wales and resigned because I thought I'd lost the Welsh team, some of the boys in the Welsh team. And there was probably, 10 Welsh boys in that British Lions team. There was a lot of replacements through injury, so probably finished up with 10 and only 2 or 3 played in the test team. And all those international rugby players think they're good enough, which is part of the psyche to be a top international rugby player. They all thought they were good enough to be in the top 15 for the British and Irish Lions. And so it may have been my own mind getting in the way, really. I just thought I'd lost them. I resigned. I got depression. I think I got depression. If lying in your bed, not wanting to talk to anybody is a sign, that's probably the sign. And I resigned and came back to New Zealand. And looking back, and I look back often about those times, you learn so much about going through that difficult time. It didn't appear difficult for most people probably, but for me, it was a major at the time. And Raywin, my wife, stayed in Wales because she was coaching the Welsh netball team, and they had a World Cup in Jamaica. And I came home to Christchurch, where I was born and bred, and picked up my parents, who were pretty elderly at the time, and went to Akaroa.
Yep. And
hired a motel in Akaroa and spent 2 weeks there. But every day I ran the forest at the top of Akaroa. I don't know, some people will know about that. And I ran myself into good nick mentally, and that made a huge difference to me. And what I learned from that, really, that experience, it wasn't about me; it was about other people. I needed to involve the team more and the other coaches more in what we were doing. And so I learned it wasn't about me and the coaching, it was about them. And the more I could involve them, the better the team would be, which I managed to put into practice when we got the All Blacks. So I think hard times are normal. You're going to go through hard times. I found it difficult because I'd never been through those sort of situations before. But in hindsight, I learned a huge amount about myself, and it changed my life, changed the way I did things. So it only took me 50 years to work it out, Matt. That it wasn't about me, it was about the people that I was working with. And the better I could make them be, or help them to be better, the better the team would be. So I was a bit of a slow learner. And so when I was lucky enough to be appointed All Black coach, we had a team-driven environment rather than a coach-driven environment. And so we had a leadership group of 7 players and 6 management, and those 13 people virtually drove the team with input from the rest of the people involved. So it was a major change in how teams were run at that time, and that was 2004.
Yeah.
And so that was a huge experience. The other one was when we lost the Rugby World Cup lost to France in 2007 at the Millennium Stadium in Wales, which was a quarter-final of the Rugby World Cup. We got beaten 20 points to 18, the hardest day of my life. But what we learned from that, we were lucky enough, I was coaching with Wayne Smith and Steve Hansen at the time, and we got reappointed, which was a bit of a shock to the country, because no coach had been reappointed after a World Cup loss. But what we learned, we weren't strong enough mentally to handle the pressures on that particular day. And we started to develop a mental skills program for the All Blacks, which has become a very integral part of what the All Blacks do. It's just like catch, pass, make the tackle, mental skills. And the mental skills have become part of the All Blacks preparation every week. And there's a long story about that, but probably not appropriate here. Maybe next time we could talk about that. So
sounds good.
As I say, I think you learn a huge amount from failure if you survive. And we're all going to survive this, or most of us are, to be fair. And I guess it's a time to reflect and come out of this bubble and join the real world. And it's not going to be the norm again. It's going to be a new norm. What can we do to better ourselves and our families and what we do in life?